Hey, hello, hi. Welcome to and or back to the EquiTheory podcast. I am your host, Jill Treese, and on this week's episode, I just kind of want to talk about some of the struggles and also awesome parts that come with owning and taking care of animals, and also really want to discuss the importance of an animal's emotional state and how that can impact their physical state, and how important it is to consider that, especially when making some changes. So let's just get into it. Okay, here we go. Okay, so before we get into the main part of the episode, I just kind of want to run through some updates, and then we'll get to the patron ad, which is currently not formatted for how this podcast is going, and that will make sense in a moment. So some of you may have noticed, if you used Anchor as your listening service, that my podcast, the new episodes aren't showing up. And I thought that they would keep showing it after I switched hosts, but I guess not. So thank you for being petty, Anchor, whatever. So if you use Anchor as your primary source, which I guess you've probably already figured out if you're listening to this that it doesn't work anymore, but I switched over to Buzzsprout. I was having some issues on the interface and financial side with Anchor, so I switched to Buzzsprout. So the ads may be changing a little bit here and there because they have to do like campaigns and stuff. It's all stuff that doesn't matter to you, but just giving you a heads up that that's going to be different. And I believe the patron intro says like, the last ad for today is whatever. I tried to cut it out of all the other episodes and streamline it. So in short, I have been doing a ton of revamping on the podcast. Like, I have spent multiple full days sitting at my computer working on the podcast, trying to bring you guys the best quality I can and make sure that everything is streamlined and nothing is weird. Like if I switched and it was like, hey, let's get into the ads, and then there are no ads, so I had to go through every episode and cut that out and import them all, move them over, and it was just a long process. So I have done that. And the other thing that I am working on is the EquiTheory YouTube channel. So I will be uploading the podcast episodes there. As of right now, it's probably just going to be audio. But if you guys want to subscribe to that, just as another platform to remind you that the episodes are out and you can listen on YouTube, and that will probably give me the best shot at having ads, actually. But anyway, I'm trying to make money so that I can keep doing this, and you guys on Patreon are helping endlessly with that. But I may in the future do videos, but it depends on how much effort that's going to take, because usually I record the episodes like super late at night, and I like don't have makeup on and it's dark, and I don't want to set up a camera, and my batteries don't last very long, and I normally record for 2 hours, and then that's footage and have to upload. And so I don't know, maybe if the podcast grows, sorry, I keep like choking. If the podcast grows a lot, then maybe we'll start doing that. But for now, we're probably just going to keep it audio. But we lost Anchor, so we're going to gain YouTube as another place that you can listen. So yeah, there's that. But I think that is about it for the updates. Oh, wait, except I'm working on merch. I am getting it. It's going. I am working with my wonderful designer, and we are coming up with just making sure that the logos are everything that we want them to be, and making them high quality and all that good stuff. So merch will be coming soon, promise. I've got some up right now, but I would not recommend buying it until there's all the designs, so you can choose, which design you like best, whatever. So that will be another way that you can support if you guys want to. So just keep on the lookout for that. It'll probably be up in the next 2 weeks or so. I've got a lot going on, but yeah, so there's that. I think that's about all for updates. I have been grinding like a mofo trying to get, everything together. There's so many like little things on the backside, and it takes all day. It's so ridiculous. Like just going through every episode and cutting out the tail end, like just a couple of seconds, or the beginning where I say the ads thing, and it has been a process. So if some stuff is a little messed up, shoot me an email and let me know and I'll fix it, because it's been really tedious work. So I inevitably missed something somewhere. If a link doesn't work, just let me know and I'll change it and send you the right one. But anyway, I am now going to posthumously, I'm not dead, but gonna read the patron ad and then we'll get into the content. So let's get to it. So the last ad before we jump into the content is one where you can support me and the horses directly. If you're willing and able, check us out at EquiTheory on your Patreon app or at patreon.com/EquiTheory. When you become a patron of the podcast, you can ask me questions that I'll answer on the podcast for just $5 a month. And at the $10 tier, you can receive merch and have access to live Q&A events, which means you get your questions answered in real time. And at the higher tiers, you have the option for phone call consults with me on air or privately, as well as access to online training with me depending on your tier. Sounds like a lot of fun to me. But lastly, you should know, should you decide to become a patron, you can cancel at any time or subscribe and unsubscribe as you please or as you're able. And if you can't support us through Patreon, no worries at all whatsoever. Listening alone is more than enough. I just want to say thank you to all the current and future patrons. Me and the ponies appreciate it endlessly. But anyway, I'm going to stop talking and we're going to get into the part where I talk about things that you're actually interested in. Okay, so yeah, this episode on our pets and the difficulties that they pose and emotional impact on physical is going to be an interesting one, but it does begin with a bit of a recountance. So we decided to move some horses around just because we've had some that have left or moved for whatever reason, and we just needed to do a shuffle to, give some paddocks a break and let some horses go in with other ones. And anyway, we just needed to move a bunch of horses. So important characters in this story. Lexi, she is a 3-year-old unbroke thoroughbred. She is the sweetest thing in the entire world. I absolutely love her, and she reminds me a lot of Zoe, and I'm trying very hard not to add her to my queue of horses. But she didn't go to the track. She's a thoroughbred, but she didn't race because she was little. And now she's the same height as her brother, Teddy, who actually did race. But she never went to the track, so she didn't get broke. And, when I first moved out here, I wasn't about to do that. So now she's become my responsibility. And, me and my boss went to this Ida Hammer clinic in Fayetteville. And we had a lot of time to talk and, plan out where we wanted to move horses and plans for, what I need to do work-wise and which horses need help and which ones I need to work with, blah, blah, blah. So, we also, by the way, I'm sorry, tangent, but a lot of you keep asking me about doing the Hoof Podcast because I want to talk all things hoof, and I do plan on having Alicia Harlov on soon to talk about that sort of thing. I'm going to have to work with her schedule, and my schedule has been stupid lately. But yeah, I really wanted to do an episode on the Ida Hammer Clinic, but it's kind of hard to do that without just essentially giving you her clinic, because she works hard for that, and she doesn't allow recordings or anything like that. We couldn't take any videos, and I get it. I wouldn't do that either, because then, people just upload and post your thing and could get misconstrued out of context and everything. So, totally get that. And also it's her livelihood, and for people to if you could get it for free, why would you pay her? So totally understand that there. So I'm kind of trying to give it some distance so I can incorporate some other things, and then she'll just be a part of that. But I highly recommend looking into her stuff if you are interested in hoof care. And so some good names to look into are Alicia Harlov, obviously, Ida Hammer, and Pete Ramey. Those are some great people. But I do plan on making a podcast about that soon. But if you want the condensed version, take the sugar and starch out of your horse's diet. It needs to be, in my opinion, under 12%, which is how you feed an insulin-resistant horse. But low starch, low sugar is considered to be under 22%, I think. But our feed is 10%. So NSC is what you call that. And it's starch plus sugar. So if you look at your feed tag, and there's a label. It'll say like 6% sugar and 10% starch or whatever. And then you get that. So you want that number to equal less than 12, in my opinion, because horses' bodies are not meant to process sugar. And that does a lot of really bad things to their gut health and their hoof health. And you get a lot of problems like thrush and white line and all of that. A lot of that stems from poor nutrition. But anyway, that's not this podcast. It'll come, but that is my little tidbit. If you want more on that, I think I wrote a longer post on my Instagram, the JETEquiTheory Instagram. There's a picture of Zoe's hoof. It's a very obvious picture. Yeah, so you can read about that. But anyway, yeah, so we're on our way back from this clinic and talking about like what we want to do at the farm and some changes we want to make. And so it's important to understand that we have like a row of paddocks. There's 1, 2, and then 3 is the arena, and then 4 is another paddock. And then behind those paddocks, there is one big paddock. So I don't know if you can conceptualize that, but essentially there's a row of 4 and then one behind that covers 3. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but the first paddock doesn't have anything behind it. So if you can picture in your mind's eye, Lexi and Teddy are in the second pasture. So we got back to the farm and we moved Doc and Leo back behind them in the big paddock, and everything seemed fine. So my boss left, and I went to go get food because I hadn't eaten all day, and I had a meeting with a professor via Zoom, of course. And so I'm like rushing to go get food, and it's like, 25 to 30 minutes away. And so I'm just about to get there, and then I get a call from the people that feed, and they were like, hey, Lexi is colicking really badly. You need to get back here. And I was like, shit. So I was like, I'm not going to have any other time to get food. And so I like sprinted inside to get food. I was like, you gotta go, give me the food. And so they did, and then I hustled back and then somehow made it back here in like 15 minutes. Please don't report that to law enforcement. But I flew home, and the thing that was making me panic the most is that Lexi is terrified of shots, and this has been something that has been on my list to work with her on, but it's not a big deal until it's a big deal. So when they had to like pull Coggins on her and give her vaccinations and everything, she about killed my boss and the vet because she is terrified of them. And so I'd been working with her like kind of in passing, but I hadn't really gotten anywhere, I guess is a fair statement. So I'm like, and I had to give her Banamine because that's what we had here. And she's also never been off the property. She doesn't know how to load or trailer or anything like that. So it wasn't like we could take her to the vet. So I'm like in a dead panic. And so I was like, okay, calm down before you enter the horse, the paddock with them. And so I've got the Banamine, which is a muscle relaxer, if you don't know. And so we went in, and Jeremy, the guy that feeds, he's walking her around, and I walked in there, and she was just like tripping sideways. Like she was trying to go down so hard on top of both of us. Like she was falling into us, trying to lay down so hard. It was so sad. And I was like, there's no way I can give her a shot. And he was like, well, she's been still at some point in this, so maybe we'll find that spot again if she's like cramping or something that it'll let up. So he just kind of walked her around, and we tried to keep her on her feet, and then eventually she just got really still, and I was like, okay, here's my chance. Couldn't find it on the side that I'm supposed to because I'm right-handed, so I normally go on their left side, and couldn't find it, but for some reason I always seem to get it on the other side. So I go to her other side, and I'm like panicking because I'm like, that there's going to be a front foot coming at me. I don't want to, lose my kneecaps in the process. So I put my finger and find the vein, and right before I stuck it in, I kind of squeezed slowly with my other hands to kind of like let her know, I don't know my logic there, but to let her know that something's coming, it's about to happen. And also so that she would be prepared for, something in that area. That was my logic in the panic mode that I was in. And I stuck it in, hit the vein the first try, and got the medicine in her, and she just went right back to normal. She was perfect. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. I seriously like flipped shit for like an hour because I could not believe that she just let me do that. I was like, that was crazy. Maybe, you know, she'll have such a good association with being in such an intense amount of pain, got the shot, and then she felt instantly better. Maybe that will fix this issue that we've been having. And I got so excited, and I was so happy for her, so proud of her that she let me do that. And I just like could not stop raving about it. I was so excited. And I was like, yeah, saved her life. Yeah, just all in a day's work. And I was feeling so good. And she like started munching on some hay, and we just decided not to give her any grain because we didn't want her to get like an impaction or anything. And I kept checking on her because I had my Zoom meeting. So I, you know, turn off my camera and get up and go look at her and make sure she was still standing. And everything was fine. My Zoom meeting started at 6 and ended at like 9:30. Professors. But anyway, so then my buddy that was here with me, she was like, I kind of want Taco Bell. And I was like, I could go for Taco Bell. So then I was like, let me go check on Lexi one more time and then we'll go. And I went outside and walked out there in like my slides, like I was not wearing boots, and because I didn't expect anything to be wrong, and I couldn't find her. And it was like pitch black outside, and so I turned my phone flashlight on, and then I saw a little figure on the ground, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I walked up to her, and she like bent back and touched her nose to her stomach, and I was like, shit. And then she stood up, and I was like, okay, well, maybe we're good. And then she started walking around, and then she started trying to go down again. And I'm like yelling at my non-horsey friend. I was like, go get a halter. And so I'm like, you know, walking around behind Lexi, just kind of trying to keep her up. And my friend comes back, and she's like, did you need the rope thing? And I was like, oh my God, you're kidding. So she had to go back and get the rope, and it was just a process of me like yelling at her to go get things, and because she doesn't know anything about horses. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry you're having to deal with this right now. And anyway, so then I called the people that work here, and I was like, I hate to do this, but you guys got to come up here. So they showed up, and I'm walking this colicking horse around in my slides, and the horse in the paddock next to us is sprinting around and running, and you know, if you remember, we just put 2 horses in the pasture behind her, and they're like, what's going on? Who are these people out here? You know, there's a lot going on. And so Jeremy gets up there, and I'm like, walk her, I'm gonna go get a shot, and we're gonna try it again. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it the second time. So I like sprint back to the barn and make up the shot, and I'm on the phone with my boss, like trying to figure out what we're supposed to do, if I can give her a shot, if it's been long enough. And so she's on the phone with the vet, and like all this is going on. It was very stressful. And so finally I get boots on, actually, so I wouldn't lose a toe, and get the shot and head back over there. And, you know, she's not doing so hot. And I was like, okay, so, and I tried to give her the shot, and she just was not having it. And the first time I did it, she like went reeling backwards, and the guy holding her, you know, I've got a shot in her neck. He's trying to keep her still, but he's pulling against her, and it was like she's already panicking because there's a shot in her neck, and then he's pulling on her, so it just made the whole thing way worse. And I'm not blaming him one bit at all. I probably would have done the same thing had I been there, been in his position. But what that did was made her feel trapped, and then she just got more visceral in her reaction, and I was like, okay, so the next time. And also, you know, I'm a typically polite, like I don't like to tell people what to do, but Mama Jill and panicked Jill kicked in, and I was like, okay, we're gonna do this again. You're not gonna pull on her. I want your hands nowhere near her face, like just essentially hang on to the end of the lead rope. And he had about like 3 or 4 feet of lead rope in his hands, and then she was pretty much loose the rest of it. And I just spent a really long time, because I had to go get, what is it, I think Dimosodin, it's a sedative, so I had to give that orally to help her, you know, settle down, so maybe I could give her the shot. And we're waiting on that, and as we're waiting, I just was like, okay, maybe I can get through these successive approximations in this amount of time. So I was like rubbing her neck and pinching her with my fingernails, and then scratching her, and like just progressively pinched her for longer, and like just did, but you can't replicate a needle in your neck. With the tools I had, there was no way I could get that far. And so she got to where she was non-reactive to me pinching her neck pretty hard. And I would scratch her and tell her she was such a good girl. And then I went to do the needle again, and her reaction was a lot less, reactive. I don't know, like she didn't explode, because when she pulled back and she realized there was no tension, she calmed down. So I think that helped a lot, but at the same time, she was still no needle. I think she was just in a lot of pain the first time, and that's why she let me stick her. So anyway, we had to go for plan B, and I had to give her, the Democedan. Maybe that is the sedative. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think of everything that happened that night. So, I ended up having to give her the Banamine after the Democedan, under her tongue, in her mouth, orally. And, then after a couple minutes, she seemed fine. And, I was like, okay, I think we need to switch her with Ruler. And Ruler was in the first paddock. So if you remember, the first paddock has Ruler, second paddock has Teddy and Lexi, and then third is the arena, and then fourth up is where like Twinkie and Shotzi were. And then behind, from Lexi to Twinkie, is that paddock that's got Doc and Leo in it. And I was like, I think, because the only variable that has changed is those horses that are in behind her paddock. And that paddock that they're in, Doc and Leo, it butts up against the woods. And I was like, okay, so that's the only thing that's changed. Why is that freaking her out? And I think it was because it was so close to the woods, and she's used to listening to the woods. And if there's movement, she's on alert. If there's a coyote or something back there, she's like, okay, I need to pay attention. But when we put horses back there and it got dark, then she was like constantly on guard, and I think it just stressed her out. And I was like, we need to switch Ruler and these two and put her in where there's nobody behind her. And then she didn't colic again. So all that to say, that was a very stressful and awful experience. But I am so glad that Sunny taught me how to give shots, because whoa, that was not fun. And she doesn't live on the farm, so that would have been a long drive for her, and it was easier for me to do it. But anyway, so that brings me to the point about the emotional state of the animal and how that impacts the physical. So it's really easy with horses to assume that they're fine, because they're prey animals. So the thing about prey animals is, as we all know, they tend to internalize and they hide things. And when they're freaking out, it doesn't mean they have to be running around or panicking or being idiots. So Lexi, when we first moved Doc and Leo behind her, she was running around and being a lunatic, but she calmed down and she relaxed and she was eating. But for whatever reason, it just never sat right with her. So she panicked, and she just kept panicking. And we think what happened, according to one of our vets, is probably that she had, I heard it like third hand. So this will be a butcher if you're an anatomy or digestive geek, but where the large intestine and the small intestine connect, there is like a little canal. And one of our vets was talking about that when they get really stressed out, that can get inflamed and they can get gassy and all that good stuff. And so she probably didn't have an impaction, but if she had kept rolling, which I don't think she had when I got out there. I think I got out there right when it started, because like I said, I was checking on her like every 30 minutes. So when I got out there and she was on the ground, she wasn't rolling or thrashing or anything. So anyway, I think she just had some gas, but if she had rolled, I think we would have ended up with a twist or something, and then that would have been fatal, because we don't have a surgery center that is super close to us. And there is one vet that does surgery here, but he like has to call everybody in. There's like not a set staff. So thanks, Arkansas, you suck. But anyway, so yeah, so we think she just had kind of like a gas cramp that hurt really bad, but I just didn't want it to escalate to a twist. So Anyway, we moved her and she was totally fine and she's been good, knock on wood, ever since. And I really just think that it stressed her out. And so when they get really stressed and anxious and they just can't relax and settle down, that's where you end up with them causing ulcers or getting colic and things like that. And I think that's probably what happened with Zoe, because if you guys don't remember, she colicked about 2 years ago. And I think it was because of, what we were feeding her, because, God, it was like a sweet feed mix. Oy, why? That horse does not need any sugar in her diet. She is a stress bucket already. So anything to help that is so powerful. So, because, with Lexi, like, we've done everything right with her, diet and health-wise, but we changed the environment, and I think she just got a little spooked at what was going on in the pasture behind her, and then she almost died. And so you better bet that I am working with her, and we're going to start working on not only getting her broke, but also needle phobia and being able to trailer. So, because those are huge things that every horse needs to be able to do, and she just missed out on that because she didn't go to the track, and then everybody just kind of forgot about her, and we didn't realize she had a needle issue until she, they had to, like, do Coggins and everything on her, and so a bit of an issue there, but I think it's because she had joint ill when she was younger, so she had to go spend like a month at the vet, and they had to give her lots of shots and flush out her joints and her hocks, I think. So she's totally fine now, but that was a lot of needles, and I would be willing to put money on that's where that came from. And also, as I have said before, though I love our vets as people, the one that she was with is a cowboy vet of sorts, so it tends to be a bit mechanical in application. That he's just like, okay, horse, however we got to get this done, we got to get it done, and it's not very personable. And I think with a really sensitive little bean like Lexi, you have to take your time and make sure that she's comfortable. And really with any horse, in my opinion, but especially the more sensitive guys, you gotta take your time and be quiet and calm and not forceful and aggressive. And, I wasn't there. I can only assume, but that tends to be the history would indicate that is the case. So anyway, yeah, it is a huge thing to consider, especially with horses, that they're so sensitive to environmental factors and they like their routine. And when one thing changes, you have to be aware of how they're feeling and where they're at, and really pay attention to them and make sure that they are comfortable and calm, because then you can get a lot of those external issues. Because if I hadn't noticed that it was stressing her out to have those horses back there, she might have colicked again and she would be dead. So, it's a huge, huge thing to pay attention to. And I'm not just talking about, like, if you move horses, then you need to watch that the horses around it don't colic. It's a one-off. But at the same time, you have to be aware that when you make changes or, anything in the horse's world that could be stressing them out, you can have side effects like that. And I think in the horse industry, it's really common that we just pay attention to all of the physical stuff. Oh, my horse has ulcers. Okay, how do I fix it? How do I treat it? Okay, I got to do this round of GastroGuard or whatever. Cool, let's do it. The end. But you don't look at what could be causing it. And that happens way too often. And it's almost like we wait until it's really bad that we address it, because it gets scoffed at in the horse world to even consider that the animals have emotions. And everyone knows horses are spooky animals, and they're quote unquote unpredictable, but they're really not. If you know them and you pay attention, then they're very predictable, in my experience anyway. But they have a fear response because they're prey animals. So it's so important to pay attention to their emotional state. And you can tell by looking at their faces, how are their nostrils set, their eyes, do they look worried, do they look anxious, are they bugging out of their heads, can you see the whites of their eyes if it's not, a wall-eyed horse. But How are their ears looking? Is their tail pinched between their butt cheeks? How are they standing? What's their posture like? Are they relaxed or are they tense? All of those things play into being able to read their emotional state. And you can only take a guess, but it's pretty accurate most of the time. There have been studies. I know Connection Training does a lot of Panskep's work, where they look at the emotional systems of the horse. They're like, I haven't done as much research into that as I would like, but there's like fear, I think lust, rage, I forget what all the other ones are, but those are the bad ones. Well, I guess lust isn't, it could be, I don't know, it depends on your circumstance. But anyway, they do experience emotions. We know this. Science has shown that they experience emotions. And if you look at like Raquel Dreisman's book, the Language, Signs, and Calming Signals of Horses, she talks a lot about how you can read their body language and their behavior. And I think if you own a horse, interact with horses, or are interested in horses, that is a must read. It's so, so important to understand their body language and how to read them, but also how context applies and things of that nature. So anyway, all of that to say that it is so important that we don't just overlook and pay attention to the overt signs that are in front of us, like, oh, she's colicking. Okay, well, let's fix that and then call it a day. I was thinking, what is causing this? Why is she colicking? It's not her food, because she's been fed the same exact thing all the time. It's not the weather, because the weather's been pretty stable until now. Now the weather's changing all over the place. But, and I was like, obviously, I just moved horses today. So that's what's causing this. It has to be. There's only one variable that's changed, and nothing else would lend itself to her just colicking out of the blue when she's never colicked before. And then I thought about it and I was like, okay, how can we fix this? And we just took a chance swapping her paddocks where there was nobody behind her, and she's totally fine. So just being able to acknowledge that they have emotions and they have feelings, and that there are things that cause what they do, instead of just addressing the actual problem. Like I said, with ulcers, you can fix the ulcers, but if you don't change what's causing them, they're going to come right back. Often the problem is the diet and the treatment. If you are constantly knocking a horse around, you're probably 10 out of 10, you got ulcers. Or if you're feeding a super high sugar diet, you probably got ulcers. The percentages in horses is astronomical. Like most horses, I think it's like, I want to say 90% of performance horses have ulcers. I'd have to fact check that. I've been listening to a lot of different podcasts about it, and I do plan to do a deep dive on it here soon. But like I said, I've been busy AF and I haven't had time. But it's super, super important. Yeah, okay, so I pulled up the stats from the Feed Room Chemist podcast, one of the episodes I was listening to. I think it's called like ulcers, or gastric ulcers or something. 95 to 99% of racehorses have ulcers. 60 to 65% of performance horses have them at least at some point, and 30% of leisure horses, like your pasture ornaments or trail riding horses, 30% of them have ulcers. So it's a huge deal, and to be able to address that, usually it's diet and compounded with a really stressful job. Yes, Wally? Compounded with a really stressful job, like constant trailering or new environments and stuff, it can be really hard on them. Because when they get stressed emotionally, then you have problems physically. Like the trailer ride itself, you can combat the physical causes, like their stomach acid sloshing around. There are lots of products out there that help, keep their acid more basic, or the pH level less acidic and more basic. And you can also like have hay and water in their stomachs that helps combat that as well. But if you're stressing them out emotionally, they're probably not going to eat, and while those products may help, if you're not fixing the issue, which is their emotional state and why they're stressed and freaking out, then you're going to keep fighting an uphill battle, and the ball's going to keep rolling back down. What is that, Atlas in Greek mythology? I don't know, a little rough on that one, but so it's really important to consider those things and make sure that you're not just looking at it medically, but that you're also looking at it from a behavioral perspective and causation. Why is it happening? Ask why always. And so, yeah, that is one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and just really wanted to put that at the forefront of everybody's mind, since it's at the forefront of mine, that we just have got to do better about paying attention and thinking ahead of situations like that. Like, there's so much more we could have done to prevent Lexi from going through that when we switched. I mean, there's no way we could have known that would have worried her and no other horse on the farm. She has not had a history of having literally any problem ever. So, except for the joint ill. But, stomach-wise, she's been very unproblematic. And she's never worked a day in her life. So, we kind of aren't concerned about her. And then, so to be mindful of things that go on and to make sure that you prep them appropriately before making a big change like that. Anyway, the other thing that I want to talk about is another change that has happened recently, and that was me losing one of my cats. So, yeah, not the best circumstance ever. But, I always get questions about, my non-equine animals. So I thought I would just talk about it because I do think it might be helpful in some aspect. But so I've been through a few second cats. So, I've talked about before Mila, my dog, that, I adopted her when I was living with my parents, and I moved out here on the farm and had her for a while, over a year, and then we started getting cats to combat our rat problem, and then at one point, a mama cat and her kitten showed up, and my boss was in love with this kitten. He was so cute. He was so weird looking, but he was so cute, and I was getting ready for class one morning, and I let Mila outside, and I wasn't there. I didn't see what happened, and apparently the kitten ran out of the barn, and Mila just prey drive kicked on, and she chased it, and she killed it. I did a whole episode on it, at the very beginning of season 2. So if you want to know what happened there, that's that. But anyway, essentially, Mila kind of got exiled from the farm, and she lives with my parents now, and they are waiting until I move, and then she'll move in with me whenever I leave here. But yeah, so not fantastic. And then I adopted Wally, my little orange cat. He is my soulmate. I love him so much. I am crazy cat lady. He's currently sitting in my lap in a very small chair. So we're just chilling. But so I needed to get a buddy for him, and it kept not working out. Like, one of them was they just didn't really get along, and then I tried for one of the barn cats, and he just wanted to be outside, because, he'd lived his whole life outside, and he was like, can I go back out, though? So the first one did end up becoming a barn cat, and she hangs out with all the other cats. They love being outside, so I did not do anything mean, I promise. I know some people have some issues with barn cats, but ours are given a second home. And anyway, I was like, it'll give me an opportunity to adopt. So I went to a local place and went to look for a buddy for Wally, and I found this cat named Archie, and, well, actually, his name was Twinkle. I named him Archie. And he was this really cool looking cat, but I loved him when we were at the shelter, but then I got him home, and he just was really, really introverted. Like, he stayed in my closet for a week. Like, I put a litter box and food and water in there, and he just would not move from where he was. And I was like, this isn't great. Don't love that this is happening. So I just kind of waited it out because the internet said that was normal. And so eventually he started coming out of his shell, and then he was great. And him and Wally kind of got along, but just anytime I would be sitting and petting Wally, and Archie would walk up, Wally would just run the opposite direction. I don't think he liked him very much for whatever reason, but he just, anytime I was with Wally or Archie tried to come up to Wally, Wally just did not like him, and he would just run away. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to fix this. So then all the problems started. So I don't know, I think I've talked about it before, so I'll keep it brief. But essentially, Archie got sick. I don't know what happened. I'd had him for a few months at the time, and he just started throwing up like multiple times every day. And it was usually just water, sometimes food if he had just eaten, but usually it was just like stomach acid and ick. And he just kept doing it. And then he started having diarrhea, and I was like, oh my God. So I called my vet, took him, and ended up spending like $700 worth of vet bills on trying to figure out what was wrong with him. Every single test I ran came back as he was perfectly healthy. And to top it all off, when he was at the vet, he didn't throw up or have diarrhea. And I was like, what? So they gave me some antibiotics to put him on, and I brought him home, and we did everything that we were supposed to do, and he got better. And I changed to a different food that was better, and he was fine for a couple months. And then just, God, I can't remember my timeline. I think it was in July he started throwing up again. And I had watched him wither away into nothing the first time. And so this time I was like, okay, this is not happening again. And this time it was much worse because the diarrhea came back and he just started vomiting like crazy. Like it was an absurd amount every day, like 15 to 20 times in one day. And it didn't slow down. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I am out of money. I cannot spend $700 again on trying to fix this cat. And I felt so bad because I was like, $700 on a horse. I'd be like, here we go. But and I guess that's just a double standard. But I was just like, I've already spent so much money and they don't know what's wrong with him and I don't know what to do. And then I started thinking about it, and I wonder if it's just the location, because he always ate bugs like because I live on a horse farm. Bugs fly in my house all the time. And not to mention, it's not the best house in the world. It's not sealed particularly well. So bugs get in all the time. And also there are lots of weird, plants and allergies and horses and stuff. So I didn't know if he was maybe allergic, but I don't know if that has anything to do with digestive issues, but or maybe it was because Wally didn't particularly like him, and maybe he was just stressed, and it was coming out of him, literally. So I called the shelter, and I talked to them, and they were like, we totally hear you. You've done everything right. If we can't do anything, we can't take him back. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to give him a couple more days, but I'm not going to watch him wither away and lose weight and suffer. And if I have to, if he doesn't get better, I'm going to have to take him to the vet and have them euthanize him. And God, that was such a hard week, because I just did not want to do that, because he was such a cool little cat. And it sucked. And having to make that decision, oh God, no. But the next day, the lady from the cat rescue called me, and she was like, hey, actually, I just found out that we have this thing called a Good Neighbor Fund, where people make donations specifically for things like this. And since you've done everything you can for him, we're going to let you do this. So essentially, they were like, just bring him back to us, and you'll just temporarily release him to us, but we won't adopt him out or anything. And, just give him to us, and we'll pay for his vet bills and run all the tests and see if we can't get him healthy. And I was like, oh my God, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. And then they told me that it would be, I think 6 weeks that they would be running tests on him. And I was like, oh God, because Wally is used to having a buddy. Even if he didn't like him, it was still something else in the house. And he got so clingy. Like, he was in my lap constantly. He was following me around the house howling. And I have to go work with the horses outside, and I'm gone for hours, or I had class, and he just, I'd be stuck at my computer working on stuff. And he was just so sad and lonely, and he was just and eventually, after he stopped being super clingy, he just kind of laid around and just looked sad. And I know this cat through and through, because he is the equivalent of a heart horse. And So anyway, I was like, I don't think I can wait 6 weeks of Wally being by himself. He is so lonely and he needs a buddy. And I'm really concerned that Archie just doesn't thrive in this environment, because they told me that he had not had diarrhea. He had had solid poops. He had not thrown up once. And at my house, he was throwing up like 5 times a day. 15 times a day. So I was like, how do you go from throwing up that much to not at all? And to some degree, like, maybe he was internalizing and he was in a new environment, so he was like holding everything in, but like, I don't think so. And I'll explain why. Because they said he was loving on everybody, and he was so, like, he just seemed like he was totally fine. All their tests came back negative. And, a few weeks went by, and actually a few days ago, the lady texted me, because I ended up releasing him to them for full custody, and so that they could adopt him out, because I was like, something's not right here. Like, I don't know if it's Wally or if it's something in the air that's making him sick. I don't know what it is, but he is not doing well, and I think if he comes back, he's going to get worse again, because it's happened twice now, and it's not fair to him for me to just keep him if he's keeps getting sick. And he was doing so well everywhere that wasn't here. So I released him to them, and the lady actually just texted me a few days ago, and she sent me a picture that he'd been adopted out, and she said that he absolutely loves his new buddy. He went to this nice family that has another cat, and they act like they've known each other for their whole lives, and he's not being shy or weird or anything like that. She sent me lots of pictures of them playing. So I am extremely happy for him. As bad of a pet owner as that made me feel to have to, that's like my second, or, well, I guess if you count the 2 barn cats that I brought in, it made me feel like a bad pet owner, but I mean, like, I'm trying to do the best thing for the animal, because I want them to thrive and not be, sick. And also, it's not like, it wasn't a humane society that I was giving him back to. They, like, specialize in rescues, and they have lots of long-term ones. And as much as I hate to take up a spot, after I've adopted him and made that commitment, I felt like I was doing him a disservice by keeping him, because something was wrong in the environment here, whatever that was. Because now he's totally fine, and he's thriving somewhere else. And I was like, that is absolutely absurd, but maybe he's allergic to horses. I don't know. But regardless, he has moved out, so you will not hear that very loud tail meow in the background anymore. But, so that was really hard, letting go and trying to make an unselfish decision in the best interest of the animal. I hated to do it, because I was like, I'm giving up an animal that I made a commitment to, but at the same time, like, I think I'm hurting him by keeping him. And I guess that was the right decision, because now he is thriving and playful and loves that other cat. So I'm glad he found him a home. And I also got to save another life. So it was a weird circumstance. So while all that was going on with Archie, after I gave them custody of him. I don't know if that's the right word, but I released him to them. I started looking for a buddy for Wally, because I was like, okay, well, now I need to make Wally not so alone. So I went to like 3 different humane societies, and they were all sick. Like, all of their cats were sick. And for some reason, like, I was like, I just spent so much money on a cat that was sick, and I want to save one of these bad boys so bad, but I can't risk it. And I didn't want Wally to get sick, because Wally is my pride and joy. And so I was like, this sucks. And then my boss on Facebook saw that there was a humane society up in North Little Rock, which is like an hour and a half away from us, and she was like, they said that they don't have any space, and that they're about to start having to euthanize cats, because they can't keep up with all the ones that are coming in. And she was like, I really think we should go up there and look. And I was like, okay, I'm going to feel like shit if I don't connect with one, and, I leave without a cat, and I'm like sentencing it to death. So we go to this humane society, and I'm looking around, and then I spotted the one, and I was like, yes, it happened. But it was a girl. Oops, sorry, my computer's on. It was a girl, and I was like, I wanted a boy cat. Because Wally's a boy. I was like, that would be easier. But anyway, so I spotted Millie, was her name, and I was like, that's the one. We're taking that one. And my boss was trying so hard to get me to get a different one, and I was like, nope, it already happened. I'm stuck. I'm sorry. So, I got the adoption, and they were like, you're going to have to come back, because they wouldn't let me leave with her without getting her fixed first. And so I had to go back like 4 days later, I think, after the vet came and spayed and neutered everybody, which sucks because, they weren't doing that because they were going to have to euthanize them. But the good news is there were like 4 other people in there that I know adopted cats, and I kept up with their Facebook, so I don't think anybody had to get euthanized, which is awesome. So I go back and I go to pick up Miss Millie, and they hand her back to me, and I was like, cool. And so I made the drive home in like a torrential downpour, and got a crate all set up and everything, and the next day when she was woken, because I didn't know, because they didn't give her any shots or anything. So I was like, okay, well, she's going to have to stay in a crate for a little bit, because I don't want her to get Wally sick. But she seemed healthy. Like the kittens at the Humane Societies, they all had like snotty noses and were sneezing and coughing. And this one, I played with it for a while and didn't seem to have anything. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to make sure that, we don't got any problems. So I made an appointment with my vet and just kept her in the kennel until I went to the vet. And then there was a litter box and food and water in there, everybody. So I was just trying to do the good thing. And I would shut the door to my room and leave Wally in there and play with her for a little while. And then, so before my vet appointment, I noticed that, I was just like looking, and I was like, that does not look like a small kitten vagina. It does not look like lady parts. And I was like, this kitten might be a boy. Yeah, there's no incision on the stomach or anything like that. And then Sunny came over, my boss, and she was like, this is a boy. This is a boy cat. And I was like, oh God. And I took him to the vet. It's definitely a boy. So Millie, who was then Astrid, then became Zuko. So, and more Avatar nerdiness, but, because we've already got Miss Azula, the little filly, but, yep. So now I have Zuko. He had a clean bill of health and is, like, I love him to death. He is the best cat. Right behind Wally, of course. But anyway, so I think it all worked out pretty well. I got to save Zuko and make sure that he didn't, end up getting euthanized because they were overfilled. It just makes me so sad. And they were a no-kill shelter too, but they were like, we don't have any room. So it sucks, but yep, I saved him. Archie got a new home that was more conducive for his health, and Lexi is alive, and it's just been a really stressful couple of months, but also like super awesome because good things keep happening. So I think we're on the upswing. I'm really happy about it. But yeah, so that was my cat and horse story. But I think, like I said, it's just so important to consider why things are happening, because with Archie, I was so worried that it was like a congenital defect and that he just had something that was wrong with him, but apparently not. I would have had to put him to sleep if they hadn't taken him back, and that makes me so sad in hindsight, because I'm like, okay, well, he was totally fine. He just didn't work in my house. Oh, God, it makes me so sad. But anyway, thankfully they took him, and now he has a wonderful home, and, those are the tough decisions. And, it's so easy when you're a kid to just be like, no, we can just keep paying and, make him better and pay all the vet bills. But when you make your own money and you have to manage it, and then suddenly that becomes a problem. And I have money budgeted for the animals, but I didn't have $700 set aside for cat vet bills. So anyway, it was a tough call. There's no right answer, but I think it worked out in literally the best way it could have. So Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap up this episode because I am tired and I have homework and another Zoom meeting with a professor in a couple hours, and I've got to get my homework done before then. But, yeah, so I hope that this podcast episode made you guys think about something. At least consider how animals are doing and pay attention to them, and be sure that, you're aware of how their environment and the things around you are impacting them, including diet, nutrition, that sort of thing, and also their physical environment, like pasture mates, who they're near, how much room they have, what kind of grazing access they have, all of those things. Super, super important for health. And yeah, so anyway, with that, I think I'm going to wrap up this episode. If you would like to keep up with us on social media platforms, you can follow me at JETEquiTheory and EquiTheory on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, except for EquiTheory. It's not on Twitter. It's just JETEquiTheory. But yeah, so there's that. And then I'm working on my website. Eventually, I will have all the information that I can find on nutrition and hoof health all organized nice and neat for you on my website. I'm working on it. It's coming. That is JETEquiTheory.com. But I think that is going to be the end of this episode. Become a patron if you want to support or have a specific question you want to ask. And beyond that, be sure you subscribe so you can follow, you can listen to all the episodes. But yeah, okay, I'll stop saying but yeah. So thank you guys for listening. I will catch you all next Tuesday.